So for most people, you can't buy property without getting financing. And part of the process of financing is getting your credit put together. More than just a credit repair company, though. Our guest today is an expert in real estate investing. He's an investor. He's an attorney. He has some unique insights into the market overall. And he really watches the market, particularly in Southern California. Shiva Baskar, Esquire, which means he's an attorney. Welcome back. You were on the show about a year ago. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be back, Bill. Thanks for bringing me on again.
And so let's talk real quick just to kind of get out of the way. Tier 1 credit, what's your basic business that you offer people in the marketplace?
Sure. So in short, Bill, and this might be a bit of a shift from when we spoke last in 2022, we're a consumer rights and credit restoration law firm. What we do is we look at people's credit reports as well as debt collection notices and debt collections issues, debt issues in general, we could say, and come up with solutions. Personally, I've litigated cases against, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, Wells Fargo, folks like that. So, yeah, our focus is coming into it, seeing if we can find something illegal, which we often can, with a collection agency or a creditor. If we can, then we can help get the negative items removed, get the client compensated. And in those situations, they never pay us because by law, both state, if you're in California, or federal, our fees are actually paid by the credit agency or the collector if we win or settle successfully. So our first line of attack is that. And then if we don't find something illegal or we can't, put something together that might be illegal, then we can offer other services to improve the credit or try to address the negative items as well.
So does your business come to you typically from mortgage providers, lenders, or does it come from consumers directly, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both, Bill. I think, it's been interesting as we've seen the shift with interest rates. Needless to say, when the market was very hot, a lot more people were shopping to refinance or more commonly buy their first home. Our biggest part of our audience would be the first-time home buyer, a lot of FHA borrowers, that sort of thing. So there may be a few credit dings, but the income is there and they're trying to get started. Families trying to get going into home ownership. And so we love helping them with that. But what I have noticed is as much as that business was there, and while I think overall mortgage applications have probably dropped, I know you have a lot of information on that. We are seeing that some of our loan officer partners are, because you could basically reach your hand, stretch your arms out, or throw a glass of water and you would hit someone who was looking for a mortgage in the last couple of years. Now you're not. So I'm starting to see more of our loan officer partners sending us folks because they're sort of the person who really couldn't qualify a few years ago now might be looking, or they're marketing more to those people. And so we're starting to still see it, but a lot of ours are direct. We do a lot of content online, on social media and elsewhere. And so it's a mix, both lenders, realtors, bankruptcy attorneys even, and then also the general public. Yeah.
The phrase I use is you could put a clown suit on with a board saying get a mortgage and got mortgages 3 years ago. And I think I was in an industry, and when rates were coming down, I think the whole industry got so lazy, and even the great loan officers work for lazy companies, and the lazy companies just sap the energy out of that. And who's left now are people who have to generate business by creating value for customers. One way is help the customer get their credit done, and knowing a good repair agency is a great source. So let's talk about that. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I had this credit report and there's some mistakes on here and there's this or that. What percentage are you able to help, and what's a typical timeline from beginning to closing the case?
Sure. So the first step, Bill, would be to look at the credit report and dive in, and our legal assistants will do this, take a look and see what we've got and what do we think might be illegal or inaccurate. And there's different sort of tiers of it. So identity theft, which is where someone opened an account and said, oh, I'm Bill Gross, but obviously they're not, and then it ends up on your credit. Or mixed file, which would, we'll pick on you today. If there were a Bill Gross and then another Bill Gross and there was some other overlap, and then something that belongs to him appears on your credit, right?
It happens a lot. Bill Gross is a surprisingly common name, and I get phone calls from collection agencies probably about one a month. My name's that common, I think.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And so you imagine if they take that one step further, They don't need a social security number to place it on your credit report. Imagine if it showed up on your credit and you're like, well, what the heck is this? I mean, you didn't go and default on a car loan or a medical bill or whatever it may be. And so that's a mixed file where there was no malintent to go and open it in your name, but it was a data confusion, a data basically swap with the bureaus. Then you have the next tier of credit reporting errors, which are people who have a lot of charge-offs. And so you didn't pay a bunch of credit cards. Whoever that is didn't pay the credit cards. And you might say, well, they're your accounts, which is true, but the law does say that the information on the credit report must be accurate. And if it's not, and you dispute it, it has to be either corrected or removed. They either have to investigate it, verify it's correct, which is one option. Okay, justice is correct. If they can't verify it's correct, they have to remove it. And that typically means remove the whole account. Now, my experience is if someone has a number of accounts that are charged off, there's going to be small to medium-sized mistakes on each account. Individually, that might not be enough for us to go to court on because you need to show there's some harm. But if I've got 6 darn accounts that all have mistakes, Bill, then, well, I'm looking at a lot of errors in aggregate. And then that's something where we can dispute all of it. If it's not corrected, we can look at how the consumer was harmed and potentially sue, get those removed, get them paid. And then besides that, there's collections. There's a lot of rules around how collection agencies can reach out. Example, if the collection agency that mistakenly called you, you pick up the phone and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pay the debt. Just let's say you use those 6 words. Okay, I won't pay the debt. 5 words. If they keep calling you, we can actually sue them because they violated the debt collection laws. So my point being, we look for all those violations, or we tell consumers how to assert their rights. We see if that causes a legal violation. And then if it doesn't, then we just dive into credit repair. And whether it's litigation or it's credit repair, the timeline I like to give at the low end is 7 to 8 months. At the high end, it's about 12 to 15 months. If it's identity theft, even longer. But the good news is if your identity's stolen, you'll get a bunch of money into settlement. So it kind of makes up for it. But yeah. So it's not a quick fix, Bill. And I know there's a lot of companies kind of pushing that. But it's a process that takes time. But at the end of the day, you get the results.
Let me do a little housekeeping real quick. This is the official podcast for the LA County Real Estate Investors Association. This association, Lloyd Siegel's proprietor, there's his handsome face. We get together every second Thursday of the month, live in Palms at the Iman Center on Motor, just south of the 10 freeway. Go to lareic.com is the easiest place to find it. Usually about 250 people come to the presentation, and we have different presentations every month. The upcoming one, Jeremy Rubin's going to talk about fixing and flipping. We have a vendor expo before with about 50 vendors in one of them. So it's a great place you can learn, network, meet some new vendors, and build your business. And then additionally, Lloyd has a great boot camp that he does on training for investors. And I think it's one of the best values. It's It's $149. You can buy tickets early for an all-day event. Really teaches you soup to nuts how to invest in real estate. Our guest today is Shiva Baskar. He is the proprietor at Tier 1 Credit. He's also an attorney. And if you're interested, you can get more information from them at tier1credit.com. He's also an experienced investor. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit, but I'm fascinated to continue the credit. So one of the things that, I think as I'm knowledgeable, I used to work with credit companies like yours, as if there's anybody like yours. And so I've had a few run-ins where creditors would call me up, one famously medical bills, where they didn't bill in time, and then the insurance declined the bill because they took too long, and they tried to hand me a bill in one case for $47,000. And I said, look, you never sent me a bill. You wait 7 months to file. You know you're supposed to do it in a timely manner. I don't know the law enough, but here's what I do know. I'm not going to have to pay that because you didn't do your job in a proper manner. You pre-checked my insurance before I went. I have texts and emails asking for it, requiring it. I gave you the proof. You never filed it. How often, it used to be, it seemed like every customer had a couple medical related bills that were usually like that, like the insurance crossed or some sort of a dispute. How often do you see medical bills as part of that process?
Sure. So Bill, this is really interesting because medical collections, the intersection between medical and credit reporting has really undergone a change in the last recent years. So in 2018, 17, actually 17 going into 18, the credit agencies and the collectors voluntarily basically adopted NCAP, that's the National Consumer Assistance Plan, which one of the things it did amongst several is it said that if insurance went ahead and paid a medical bill on behalf of a consumer, that bill would automatically be removed from collections or removed from the credit report. So if you had a bill and insurance did what insurance to 23, we had an agreement between the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, along with the credit agencies, where all medical collections under $500 per collection or all paid medical collections are automatically excluded from credit reports. So those small medical bills under 500 can no longer show up. If you pay it, it's automatically removed. So there have been some good changes there.
Wow, that's good to hear. And then it also seems like, on the medical bills, in the case I had, they send you the request with the legal requirements of what they're supposed to provide. So I just sent them back a letter saying, "Oh, great, give me 1 through 8 that the disclaimer says you're supposed to provide," and they never could. And they come back a year later saying, "Well, you never paid the bill." Well, no, you never replied to my email or to my request for that information. It just seems like it's a game of cat and mouse, and I imagine to some degree that's what you're able to do to get things taken away. But I will say that whether it be a collection agency like yours or individuals, if you're persistent and you follow up, you keep copies, you keep records, don't get bullied by companies. That I find their real profit is in bullying you into a place where you're leveraged, your house is ready to close, and they run an updated credit report, and now you're desperate, and they say, "Okay, you owe us $45,000, we'll take $5,000 to go away." And they wouldn't get a penny except for the fact you're desperate, the moving van's packed, your wife's yelling at you, you got kids, and that's how they make money in many cases. And so I always urge customers, jump on the stuff early. When you're shopping and you see it, get started on that. Get a professional, talk to Shiva, and let's get these things taken care of early. Let's talk a little bit about your role as an investor. Talk a bit about what you do as a real estate investor. How is that? You're obviously running a full-time business from what I can see, right? How does real estate investing work into your schedule and your activities?
Sure. So long story short, I'm a partner in a firm called LME Investments, which stands for Local Multifamily Experts. And the reason we gave ourselves that name is that we focus in a very specific niche, which is we operate in Los Angeles, LA County, mostly LA City. And what we do, my role is I play a role on the legal side and also with partnering and bringing in investors, the deals where we do have investors. And I kind of cut my teeth with single family and small multifamily investing. And that's how I got started, through a friend of the family who, has been in it for a while. And so what we do is we buy value add multifamily properties. That value add means the income on the property is below optimal, meaning there's room to increase it, number one. And number two, there's room to sort of improve the operations and thus the value, and ultimately give a better product to the people who live there. And so, yeah, that's what we focus on. My partner, Sanjeev Bhatia, who runs our firm, built his portfolio on his own with very little outside capital, and then brought on some investors, and got started in Inglewood, South LA area, which is where a lot of we are, but other areas as well locally. And so, yeah, and one unique thing with us, Bill, is we do manage in-house. So the 3 T's of tenants, trash, toilets, we have definitely experienced them. We've got some war stories, and yeah, just really take a local approach. We're fully aware, as you are, of all the challenges here in Los Angeles. I know you and I have talked about them at length and shared. Anyone who will give me an ear, I'll tell them. But at the same time, there's also opportunities, and that's what we look for.
So it seems like, That the two areas you mentioned, the trash toilets and tenants, and well, I guess tenant issue, those two areas, either you have to be all in and an expert on, or you should never play in either one of those. Right. And the mistake I see are investors who buy a property. Oh, it's a 4 unit. Oh, it's a couple tenants. No, 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 no. If you're not in that game, if you're not in that game, don't play, in that game. Leave that to people to do. And I remember I want to say during like the peak of COVID, there was a big multifamily investor in the South Bay, you recognize his name, who gave a talk about how is he able to manage his portfolio and have such low evictions, such low delinquencies, such low turnover when everybody was complaining about it. And the thing he said that you mentioned at the end was they really work on creating value for their tenants, having a better quality product, having better communication with their customers, servicing their properties better, so people want to live there, they want to pay their rent, they want to, take care of the place as best they can. Because if they don't want to, it's a nightmare. So talk a little bit about the fact you guys specialize in that. You chose to, but it also kind of creates a little bit of operating, a place with a little less competition if you're willing to take that on, I think.
Yeah. So Bill, for us, and Sanjeev will always say this, it really is about having your eyes and ears on the ground, meaning your team. And we could define team in our case. We think I have a lot of regard for our friends in property management who do a good job, but we do think that as investors to realize that extra upside or return, it's going to happen more, I would say, when you do it in-house, by which I mean you yourself if you're small, or having a team with you if you hit some scale. But for us, it's really about monitoring situations before they get worse. Example, I've dealt with something where mold pops up, in a property. That's not because a tenant did anything bad or a landlord did anything bad. It's the nature of, we own plenty of, personally or otherwise, plenty of things that are 1940s construction, 1930s, 1950s, even newer. And you run into these issues. It's more about being proactive and solving it. So figuring out, what do I do? What's required to solve this? What are my sort of key steps? And I think communicating with the folks there about, hey, this is how it's going to get fixed. This is what it is. By the same token, we were just talking about COVID and the crisis, that we've had in a lot of areas with non-payment. And I'll tell you, even on larger properties, I see it. I mean, we looked not too long ago at a 30+ unit in a pretty hot area in LA, and there were a number of tenants with a lot of back rent, and it's an ongoing situation, which is keeping a lot of people away from the deal. But point being, it's really about being proactive. So reaching out and saying, okay, maybe the tenant's lower income. Well, here's some sources of aid.
I think we lost him. Oops.
You hear me?
No, well, I couldn't. You were out for about 10 or 15 seconds. I'm sorry. It was the juicy part you got to, which is what you discovered kind of during the height of the pandemic about communicating with people. And looks like you're caught again. I think you're having issues.
Bill, you hear me now?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, you lost me, you said? You hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, so what I was saying in a nutshell is it's really about being proactive. If a tenant's a problem, figure out what's the solution, find resources, like if they can't pay. Otherwise, deal with the court process. If you can avoid it, obviously that's good. Same thing if there's something you need to fix in the unit. Don't delay it or hope they'll forget about it, because the same way you wouldn't want that in your home, nobody else wants to live with their kids in a place with mold. And unfortunately, one thing I do see that is unfortunate in Los Angeles and other markets, it's not just an LA thing, there are some very large property owners who, by virtue of having scale and having lots of attorneys and having lots of installation in their assets and legally, will sometimes play fast and loose, or they either don't keep an eye on it or they don't think it's worth the time. But ultimately, that does also lead to situations where regulations come down the pike, which are targeted at these huge people who are almost impervious to it. But the smaller landlords end up paying the price in terms of regulations that may not help the tenants and are really onerous. And it's designed to solve a problem that I won't say is non-existent, but it's not being enforced or done properly. And the truth is, I know you discussed this in your newsletter. Ultimately, I mean, one thing we do think we're playing a part in, we take plenty of people who are in Section 8 and other programs and work with those folks. And so if you do want to alleviate the housing crisis in Los Angeles, I think landlords are a part of the solution and can play a constructive role, just like good tenants and community groups and others. And so that's what we're trying to do. Of course, we're doing it for profit, but I think we're making a difference in the process too.
Well, look, everybody's doing it for profit. I mean, I think somebody explained to me one day, the only difference between government and other businesses is government is a business that has both badges and guns behind it.
Yes.
And so when you talk about, the housing crisis, the solution is never going to be the city or the county or the state building housing. It's never solved the problem. It's never going to solve the problem. And I think we have elections coming up. If you accept a politician who promises to solve the problem by them building housing, I always say, well, let me see your resume. How many houses have you built? Because I know as a real estate agent, it's one thing to say you're going to build a building. It's another thing to actually do it. There's a huge gap in those two.
Yep.
And when a politician who, for the most part, has never built a house, sold a house, fixed a house, maybe lived in a house, tells us they're going to build 3,000 or 4,000 units, that's a lot harder than it sounds. Building 5 units is harder than it sounds. And building 5,000 for a city is just not an easy tale. And I think we as citizens who vote need to, look for results. I'm in a results-oriented business. If I don't sell the house, my seller fires me, my attorney fires me. I sell the house, I have a happy client. And I think with our government, we need to hold them to a standard that says, hey, we spent a lot of money on solving the homeless problem. You're not able to do it for us. Doesn't make sense. So is your investment in portfolio focused exclusively then in this group, or do you do things separately to diversify, or how do you approach?
Yeah, I have things on my own and then within this group, and non-real estate investments, of course, I have stocks, index funds, what have you. But a lot of our effort is certainly focused on the real estate side and what we can actively operate and manage. And so from our standpoint, it's about, hey, what's the return that you can achieve? How long does it take? And I'll say this for Los Angeles, because I know you've certainly, I know investors in a number of different markets. LA, and I would say LA is not not an anomaly here. There are a couple other markets I can think of like it. The San Francisco Bay Area, particularly SF and Oakland, and New York City are 2 others. These are places where if you're willing to operate hands-on and hold long-term, you can do very, very well. In part because of all these rules that exist around rent control, which has never reduced the cost of housing anywhere. You can do very well, but it requires a hands-on approach. And either if you're going to do it yourself, really commit to it and have a system, or find an operator who you align with and who can do it. But whatever it is, long term, I am bullish on Los Angeles. I think we do have 10 million people in the county. We have a pretty diverse economy here, as you know, from entertainment and tech and finance to shipping and to ports and healthcare. And we've got a dynamic population here. Despite all the mismanagement and all the other issues that we talk about, there are, in spite of that, things do function and things do happen. And I think I have heard plenty. I'll put it this way. I've met plenty of people who own multifamily here and exited. And the most common, I hear some who say, oh, I'm so tired of that. But even those people, they periodically go back and check what their property is worth or what they sold years ago. And they're like, God, that thing is worth so much now.
Exactly.
At it. And that's always the thing. If you're willing to stay in the game and build a long-term wealth, you'll do well.
Well, I think there's 2 things to what you said. One is you're right that you just stay in the game, and the people who get out stop being in the game. They don't stay on top of the property. They don't stay on top of their staff. The property declines, the rents decline, they fall behind. Then they complain about the market and sell out. And you're right. They come back 3 years later and say, wow, that thing did really well. But it's only because the next guy put the work in and put the time in. And the second thing I think that I see, and why I appreciate chatting with you today, is in every niche, the people do well are experts in that niche. I interviewed a guy who specializes in commercial West Side only. My brother-in-law runs a REIT over $1 billion, I think $2 billion value, a REIT, industrial Southern California, but he only goes out so far. Like they have a defined geography. They know everybody in that area. He knows buildings backwards and forwards, vendors backwards and forwards. And so, and I try to take the same model in my business and focusing on probate real estate. It is a competitive market. If you are the master in that niche, I think you're right. LA is a great place to work. If you're not, it's no place to play around, particularly with tenants.
No, it's not.
I'm just so not interested. I have to tell you, I'm in a real estate deal now where, the original plan was they wanted me to buy the property and rent back to somebody for a long period of time. I said, no, not even a day. I'm not going to sign a rental agreement for a day. We have to work it out. We worked it out where we're not going to close until they're out, but I'm going to leave my money in escrow for a long period of time. Fine. I am not taking, because I know I can't operate. I can't compete with you guys in that world. I don't want to compete with you. I just want my money back. Thank you very much.
No, Bill, you're exactly right. And I think to the story with your brother-in-law, I think specialization and hands-on is a key. And I know you certainly know a lot of real estate professionals and realtors. And so one thing that I would suggest is just an opportunity, just because we kind of see the gaps in the marketplace. And while it's true that we operate in-house, so we might not necessarily farm things out to a third-party property management, but if you really look at it, a lot of property management firms, including some really wonderful ones, they've been around for a while. The people who are running them have been there for a while, which is great because they're seasoned, but there is not a succession plan in place in many of these companies. You don't have a lot of sort of folks coming up through the ranks in the real estate world who are necessarily looking to get into it. And I don't blame them. I mean, doing leasing or doing property management in LA County or any county, but certainly this one is probably near the top of the tough list, is not there. But I would submit that there is a real opportunity for someone who's maybe a realtor or other real estate professional and is scrappy, is hands-on, is willing to network and find vendors, and is willing to really dig in. I think there's a tremendous opportunity in the long run to build a company, particularly as you are and others are, which is more digital and more tech savvy. I really think there's potential. I mean, gosh, Bill, like if you want a tenant who's working and has a job, you know how many property management companies will not show the unit after 4:00 and they won't show it on Sunday or on Saturday or even Tuesday at 6:00, and you lose out on so many good tenants. And if it's not a 50-unit building with a leasing manager, what do? So to me, there's really an opportunity for someone who's willing to dig in and do it, to really build a great property management firm and work with small or large landlords and do things. So I think just something for anyone to keep an eye out for. I talk to realtors and I tell them, if you're interested in multifamily and you're willing to get hands-on, besides being an operator, you can kind of bridge the gap by being in management in some way or starting a management firm. I think there's a real play here.
Well, I also think that if you could start working for a management company at any income, minimum wage, and learn the business. And the thing I like about it as a career development tool is in property management, you see more transactions, you see more customers, you see more properties, right? A realtor, if you sell 10 houses a year, you're a superstar. Property management companies might have to turn over 2 or 3 units a month. And that's 20, 30 leases. That's, 50 showings. That's however many. So the numbers, you get better at something. You talked about how you started in New York doing leasing. And I hear that story over and over again. And I think part of it is the accelerated learning of doing, yes, it's a smaller contract, but somebody still has to sign it and write a check. And I think the more of those you do, the more confidence you get, the more you learn. And I always feel like property management is a great stepping stone for career, whether you want to be an investor or you want to build a property management company, but you're going to see from the inside. And generally, you're learning from somebody who's really built something, right? Property management companies are usually built by investors who know what they're doing. And like you mentioned, they're managing their own properties. Well, that's the kind of person you want to learn from.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's a sort of last anecdote on that. There's a great event for multifamily investors in Southern California that we attended, hosted by a brokerage. And it's funny because being in the industry, you would hear people who are at the very institutional level, which is wonderful, but they may not be in the trenches. And then had one gentleman whom I know personally, who's a large landlord in LA, and he also manages for other people. And he got up there and started talking. And Sanjeev and I, my business partner, we looked at each other and said, you know what? he says the real stuff that we're seeing and thinking. Like, this is one person who knows it. And so to me, like, to be a person and to learn from someone like him, and he's a great, mentor as well. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. You really can learn the business inside out. And even if you don't have any capital, you can learn how to operate the properties well enough that you can probably partner with someone who has the capital, because you can bring that expertise that they may not have. So, yeah.
And it seems like there's an unfulfilled demand for property management. I just see it all the time. It's a tough business, but there's a need for it. And if you're a hustler on the come up, it's a great way to work your way in. Well, look, Shiva, you and I can go on forever. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy and have other things to do besides chat with me. Again, thank you. Tier1credit.com is the company. If somebody's interested in learning more, do you guys do webinars? Do you have events, or you have a website, or what's the best way for people to kind of learn about you if they're interested in your credit services?
Sure. So tier1credit.com is the best place to go.
Okay.
Or you can also drop, I'm on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can drop my link. I think I'll give it to Bill. Just look up Shiva Baskar, LinkedIn, there you go. And yeah, reach out to me anytime. Definitely eager to help however we can. What I like to say with credit and with debt, where there's a problem, there's a solution. And people, we never are pushing someone to file bankruptcy or do anything else. But if you have a set of tools, thanks to our legal system, if the debt is severe enough, bankruptcy may be the option. Settling debts may be the option. If there's mistakes on the credit reports, then disputing and litigation is the option. The biggest thing I'd say is you have options. And so just don't give up on, buying a home or funding that business, which requires some credit or whatever it may be because of this. It doesn't have to be a permanent obstacle. There's so many people who've overcome it, and we've seen it personally. So it really is possible.
It's funny you say that, here at the end, because I tell people all the time who are in that position, file bankruptcy. It's legal. You're not stealing. You're not avoiding. It's in the law to protect you. So United Debtors Prison the rest of your life. And I tell them, every bank you think is so big, they all went bankrupt. Bank of America is not Bank of America. It's North Carolina National Bank, who bought Bank of America, who was bankrupt, flipped the name. Wells Fargo is not Wells Fargo. I think it's Wachovia, who bought Wells Fargo, flipped the name because Wells Fargo went bankrupt. JP Morgan, Chase.
They bought Washington Mutual. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were rich. I think Aaron Burr, the guy who shot Hamilton, started JP Morgan years ago, and that changed. So the point is, I'm not saying be frivolous. What I'm saying is there are legal remedies. Talk to somebody, get good advice on that. But you don't have to spend your rest of life in shame because you made some bad decisions, particularly when you're younger. Or, I got involved with a very evil person financially years ago. I filed bankruptcy like 1992. It was just overwhelming, the legal trauma that I had to go through. But once the bankruptcy cleared things, and I start over again, and that's what the law provides for, as long as you're doing things properly and legally and straightforward. So thanks for putting that in. And I try to tell people time, there shouldn't be any shame in that. That's just the legal process, and you lost that section of your life financially. Now you start over again, and hopefully you can go on and get some bigger things done. So thanks for sharing that.
Agreed.
And I think the whole system's rigged against consumers. Get somebody on your side like Shiva. The whole thing with a credit report, it's all designed to force you to pay money you shouldn't have to pay. And these credit agencies, they want you to subscribe to their service. They offer you no solution. And so, again, Shiva, I really appreciate what you do. You and I have a little banter on the emails once a week.
Yes. Read Bill's emails, folks, please. I get a lot of email lists, and I will tell you, in all seriousness, Bill's is one of the only ones I open every week, really.
Because I just see people bullied all the time by the credit companies, I think, are thieves. The banks are thieves. I just feel like the whole education system educates people to be passive and enslaved financially. Don't take control. Do things legally, do things properly, use the law to your advantage, use your legal resources, fight back, don't get bullied. And Shiva Baskar along the way is one of the people that you might meet and should feel comfortable if it makes sense. So Shiva, thanks again for your time. Always appreciate talking to you.
Hey, likewise, Bill. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
And for the rest of you, this is the LA County Real Estate Investors Association. We get together on this call. We broadcast every Tuesday at 3 p.m. But we get live. We go to the Iman Center on the second Thursday of the month. Come visit us. LAREIC.com if you want to register. We get about 250 people. We have a presentation. March 14th is Jeremy Rubin. We have a great speaker every month. We have a vendors expo before with about 50 vendors like me, and then other programs as well. So hope to see you there. If I can help with any questions, please reach out to me, Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.